بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد النبي العالمين الذي اسمه مكتوب في الإنجيل والتوراة أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فإن آمنوا بمثل ما آمنتم به فقد اهتدوا وإن تولوا فإنما هم في شقاق فسيكفيكهم الله والسميع العليم وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنا أولى الناس بعيسى ابن مريم وليس بينه وبين نبي وكما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. My dear brothers and sisters and families are watching, the love that we have for Isa alayhi salam and the prophets that have come before the Prophet sallam is not only something which is a part of our religion, it is an essential element of our belief system. That our belief system teaches us that if we lack in the belief and we lack in our love for the prophets that came before our Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it actually has a direct impact in the strength and the love that we hold for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that all of us prophets are brothers. We're all brothers. So disrespecting or dishonoring or lacking the love of one of these brothers directly affects in a negative way the love or the relationship you would have for the other brother. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that when it comes to Isa alayhi salam, I am the closest to him. في الدنيا والآخرة. When it comes to the prophets and the siblings of the prophets, yes, we're all one family, but I am the closest to Isa alayhi salam. ليس بيني وبينه نبي. There was no prophet between me and him. So we're the closest siblings. Like the way you would think about in a family of siblings, those who are normally closer in age or they have no one in between, they have a very unique relationship. It's a very special relationship. And he says this relationship not only holds true for us in this world, but it will actually hold true for us even in the akhirah, as we will be raised closer together. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights in the Quran when he speaks about the iman and the faith that we are expected to have for all the prophets. What makes our beautiful religion and our beautiful faith unique and exclusive is that we don't differentiate between the prophets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he speaks about the different messengers in Surah Al-Baqarah, he completes that discussion by saying that if you want to bring iman, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا, if we choose to be believers and if we choose to claim that we are Muslims, then our responsibility is to believe like those that came before us, is to believe like the prophets that came before us, even though we can't reach that level of faith. But the significance of this verse is not to expect for us to become believers like them, but for us to realize that we're also followers of those prophets. وَاتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. Where the Prophet ﷺ is commanded that be a follower of the prophets of the past, like Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّن رُسُلِي. That we do not differentiate when it comes to our faith for the prophets of the past. We don't differentiate when it comes to our relationship with the prophets of the past. And this is the precedence that is set by the Quran for all the prophets that came before. And when it comes to Isa alayhi salam specifically, this relationship of love did not necessarily begin when the Prophet came down. This relationship of love began when Isa alayhi salam became a prophet. Because a part of the da'wah of Isa alayhi salam was to tell the people about a prophet that was to come after him. مُبَشِّرًا بِرَسُولٍ يَأْتِي مِن بَعْدِ اسْمُهُ أَحْمَدٍ. This relationship began when Isa alayhi salam's message began. When he was calling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when he was tested by the test of his people and persecuted by his people, he was giving the glad tidings. He was speaking about a prophet that was to come. He was telling his people that if you don't believe in me, well, that's on you. In that relationship you will face with Allah. But my responsibility is not just to tell you about Allah. My responsibility is not just to inform you of the oneness of Allah in my prophethood, but my responsibility is to inform you that there will be a prophet that will come after me. Min ba'd ismuhu Ahmad, and his name will be Ahmad. And when the Prophet ﷺ came down and his message was received by the Christians and the Jews of Mecca and Medina and the Christians of the surrounding communities like Najran, the Prophet ﷺ would recite these verses to them. Not just the fact that Isa alayhi believed in me, but I come musaddiqan. I come and I testify to the truth of that which Isa alayhi salam came with. The message was the same, except for that which was tarnished for what was in between those 500 years. The message was a mirror of each other. So the Prophet's da'wah, when he started off in Mecca and Medina to the Christians and the Jews, our cousins and their communities, the Prophet informed them that our message is the same. And therefore, when the Prophet was seen for the first time by the monk Bahira, when he was traveling in Sham with his uncle Abu Talib, and he was a young boy at this time, between the age of 8 or 10, between the ages of 8 or 13, some would say, a young boy, and he's traveling from Mecca to Syria for the journey of trade with Abu Talib. And as he's on this journey, Bahira sees the Prophet, this monk sees the Prophet, this young boy. And this shows you the relationship that the Prophet had with Isa alayhi salam. It was deeper than words. It was etched within the hearts of the followers of Isa alayhi salam. It was deeply engraved within the hearts of those who were the true followers of the Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So he sees the Prophet from a distance, and he says to Abu Talib and the people of the caravan that, who's the father of this child? Who's the father? And Abu Talib responds by saying that I'm the father of this child, that I am his father. He says, no. You can't be his father. He says, what do you mean? So if this is the child, if he is who I believe he is, his father has already passed away. You can't be his father. So who is the father of this child? And who are you to him? He said, well, you're right. His father has passed away, but I'm like his father. I've taken him in. I'm his uncle. I'm his guardian. And Abu Talib says to him, like, how did you know his father had passed away? And how were you so sure that I was not his father? What do you know of this boy? And the monk responds, and he says so beautifully, that I know that he's the last prophet. I know, I have conviction that he is the final prophet, and he is the prophet that Isa alayhi salam gave glad tidings about. And we are waiting for him. And I knew that he was that same prophet, because مَا مَرَرْتَ بِحَجَرٍ وَلَا شَجَرٍ. You all did not cross by a single stone or tree. You did not pass by a single stone or tree, إِلَّا سَلَّمُوا عَلَيْهِ, except that they said salam to the Prophet. This boy that was walking, there was not a single stone or tree that he walked by except that the tree said salam to him. In one narration, they say, except that those trees and stones bow to the Prophet. And then he says, I saw the clouds from above that were covering the Prophet. And everywhere you would go in the heat of the sun would have been harming this boy. The clouds would shade him as if he had a special protection. So I knew he was someone unique. The love that we have for Isa alayhi salam was felt by how the followers of Isa welcomed the Prophet ﷺ. When the Muslims were being persecuted in Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ recognized and understood that support for this community would come from a community that is similar to ours. And he decided to send the Muslims, a group of people, a group of his close companions, to Habasha and Abyssinia. And when he sent these Sahaba to Habasha, and he sent him to Abyssinia, the mushrikun of Mecca, because they were so deeply enrooted in their hatred, jealousy, and their need to see the Muslims being harmed, this is what brought them a sense of fulfillment. Such wretched and filthy, so filthy were their hearts, that even though they were in Mecca, they felt uncomfortable. That how could the Muslims be living comfortably? How could they be at ease? So they sent a convoy of the leaders and the spokespersons of Mecca towards Habasha. And now Najashi, who has this relationship, who has this pre-existing relationship with the leaders of Quraysh, he summons the Muslims to the court. And the leaders of Quraysh come with goods and gifts of skin and of hide and of wealth and of clothing, of gold and silver. to bribe him and to entice Najashi by telling him that these people who have come to you, they are fugitives from Mecca. They have forsaken the religion of their forefathers and they've left their city. You have to send them back. You shouldn't allow them to be here. You shouldn't give them asylum. You shouldn't grant them protection. And Najashi, as an intelligent man, he says, no problem. I just want to hear what they're saying. We also want to hear their side of the story. So he summons Ja'far radiyallahu anhu in the entirety of that convoy and the Muslims that were in Habasha. And Amr ibn As is there as a leader of the Quraysh before he became a Muslim. And all the leaders of Mecca are watching this. The palace is filled. And Najashi calls upon Ja'far. And he says, is what they're saying true? That you are fugitives? That you should be staying in Mecca and you've left the religion of your forefathers? Why have you left the religion of your forefathers? And Ja'far responds by saying, yes, all of this is true. That we have left the religion of our forefathers. We are not fugitives, but we believed in a new religion. And Najashi says, okay, what is the religion that you believe in? And Ja'far responds by speaking about the oneness of Allah. He says that prior to the coming of our Prophet, we were people who would steal from the wealth of orphans. Our Prophet taught us not to steal from the wealth of orphans. We were people that would bury our daughters alive. Our Prophet taught us not to bury our daughters alive. We were people who believed in many idols as our gods. Our Prophet taught us to believe in the oneness of God. And Amr ibn As, as he sensed that Najashi was inclining towards the da'wah of Islam and the da'wah of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, he says that, O king, ask them about what they believe in Isa though. They believe in Muhammad as a prophet, but they have no belief in Isa. They don't believe in your person. They don't believe in your prophet or in their understanding your manifestation of God. They don't believe in that. So don't get tricked by their words of eloquence and their ability to coin you. Ask them about Isa. So he turns towards them and he says, well, what is your belief about my prophet Isa? And Ja'far radiyallahu anhu begins to recite from the beautiful verses of Surah Maryam. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَرْيَمْ. And he starts reading from the story of Isa alayhi salam and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights that Maryam alayhi salam draws herself away from Masjid al-Aqsa in the compound of Aqsa. إِذْ انْتَبَدَتْ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا مَكَانًا شَرْقِيًّا, to a far east area. And how Jibreel alayhi salam descends. And as he descends, فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِنْ دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. And he descends upon the mother of Isa and Maryam alayhi salam. And she says to him, قَالَتْ إِنِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ, oh, I seek refuge from Allah. مِنْكَ إِن كُنْتَ تَقِيًّا, that if you are someone who has the fear of Allah in your heart, go far from me and leave me alone. And as Ja'far is reading this, he's saying that Allah then responds by saying, إِنَّمَا أَنَا رَسُولُ رَبِّكَ. That Jibreel alayhi salam says that I am a messenger of your Lord. لِأَهَبَ لَكِ غُلَامًا زَكِيًّا. And I was sent to gift to you a child. That was the dua of your mother that she made when she was gifted you. Allah had a plan this entire time. لِأَهَبَ لَكِ غُلَامًا زَكِيًّا, to gift to you a purified child. And she responds by saying, how can I have a child? أَنَّا يَكُونُ لِي غُلَامٌ. How can I have a child when no one has come close to me and I'm not married, I don't have a relationship? And Jibreel alayhi salam responds that this is the will of Allah, it will happen. This is easy for Allah. This is the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Jibreel alayhi salam blows inside of her sleeve and she starts burying the child in the pain of pregnancy. And sometime later Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَحَمَلَتْهُ فَانْتَبَدَتْ بِهِ مَكَانًا قَصِيًّا فَأَجَاءَهَا الْمَخَاضُ إِلَى جِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ. The pains of labor take her to these palm trees. And she leans against these trees. قالت يا ليت مت قبل هذا قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. I wish that before this day I had already died because of the pain of being alone, or also because I know that after today everyone's going to know my name, and I lived a life where no one knew my name. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to her, وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذِعِ النَّخْلَةِ تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُطُبًا جَنِيًّا, that shake the trees of this palm tree and eat from the dates of this tree and drink from the water beneath you. And after she gives birth to this baby in Isa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to her, go back to your people, but don't speak to them. Tell them you're fasting. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا فَأَتَتْ بِهِ قَوْمَهَا تَحْمِلُ. And understand, my dear friends, that Najashi and all of the people that are with him in his cabinet and the followers of Najashi are Christians. They love Isa alayhi salam, but they don't know that we also love Isa. They don't know that we also love Maryam alayhi salam. They don't know our relationship and our Prophet's relationship with Isa alayhi salam. And they're hearing this story for the first time as they've never heard before. They've never heard about the birth of Isa from such a profound, divine message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've heard from the scriptures. They've heard from the historians, but they haven't heard directly from Allah and from the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're hearing this and they're locked in. And the Prophet or Ja'far is saying, فَأَتَتْ بِهِ قَوْمَهَا تَحْمِلُ. That Maryam alayhi salam returns with Isa to her people. And the people see Isa and they say, قَالَ يَا مَرْيَمْ لَقَدْ جِئْتِ شَيْئًا فَرِيًّا. That you've come with this major crime and sin. How would you do something like this when your father wasn't an evil person and your mother was also a pure person? But she was told not to speak. فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. She simply pointed towards Isa. And we learn from this, my dear friends, when we concede and submit to the commandments of Allah, we do not seek the rationale behind it to see whether or not it will fulfill the outcome that I had in my mind. She could have spoken, but because Allah told her not to speak, the only defense that a person has is their own tongue. They say you're your best defense, but she was told not to speak. We were told to submit. Now we don't seek a source of clarity outside of that submission. One's rationale should never extract them from the submission of the divine. One's lack of commitment to Allah's commandments is what forces them to seek clarity from other sources. فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. She just points. She understood that Allah has a plan. قَالُوا كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. How can a child speak? Why are you pointing towards this child? And from the plan of Allah, the child spoke. And he said, قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. I am the slave of Allah. Not the son of Allah. The slave of Allah. آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. He has given me the book. He has made me a prophet. And He has made my presence, my birth, He has made it a blessed time, a blessed place. And everywhere I go is Mubarak. Allah has given me blessings of being a prophet. And He has taught me to be good to my mother. And He has taught me to obey my mother. And as Ja'far radiallahu anhu completes these ayat that he's reciting, and as he's crying, reciting the verses, the narrations mention that فَبَكَى النَّجَاشِيُّ حَتَّى إِخْضَرَّتْ لِحْيَتُهُ. That Najashi was crying. Amr ibn As says, Najashi was crying till his beard was filled with tears. وَاخْتَنَقَ بِالْبُكَاء. And he says in some narrations that he was choking on his tears. Amr ibn As says, even us, the enemies of Islam at that time, as we were watching this scene unfold and we're seeing Najashi cry, even we started crying. وَبَكَتْ أَسَاقِفَتُهُ. He says all of his cabinet members and everyone that was sitting there, that were watching his ministers his wuzara, his mushirs, all of them are crying. Amr ibn As says that we couldn't hear anything but the cries of those people. This is called love. Love that wasn't spoken of, but it was etched within the followers of Isa alayhi salam. And it was etched within the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was deemed a part of our faith to love Isa. It was deemed a part of our faith to understand the birth of Isa alayhi salam and to recognize the value of Isa alayhi salam in our community. And he said to Amr ibn As that these people, you can forget about them. You can offer me the gold equivalent to the mountains of Mecca, but I will not let these people go. I will not let them out of my sight. It is a part of my faith to honor them and to serve them. And he said, Wallahi, if there was a way that I could travel and see Muhammad sallam, I would serve him and I would wash his feet. And when he passed away a believer. And the Prophet prayed janazah upon Najashi, radiyallahu anhu. He prayed the only salat, janazah that was ghaib, the only prayer upon the deceased that was led by the Prophet without the deceased being present was upon Najashi. Because the Prophet appreciated his support, but he was a brother for the Prophet ﷺ. They asked, how do we love Isa alayhi salam? Our love for Isa is found deeply within every aspect of our tradition. Where the Prophet ﷺ speaks about the love of Isa in different aspects of his life, when he says that I will be the closest to him on the day of judgment. We will be raised together. How Allah honors Isa alayhi salam in the Quran. إِذْ قَالَ اللَّهُ يَا عِيسَى إِنِّي مُتَوَفِّيكَ وَرَافِعُكَ, that we have raised you. The Prophet ﷺ would find honor. And the Prophet ﷺ would find honor and he would find triumph in the victory of the Christians of that time. I'll say it again. The Prophet ﷺ would find honor and triumph in the victory of the followers of Isa at that time. Alif Lam Mim, Ghulibatir Rum. Surah Al-Rum, the first verses that are revealed are verses that speak about how the Muslims found success and honor and strength when the Romans would defeat the Persians, because the Romans were Christians. It was part of our faith to feel, just like how if your sibling succeeds in life somewhere, but you don't succeed in that area, but your brother succeeds in it, right? And you're happy for your sibling or your sister. The same way, a part of our faith, how Allah taught us in the Quran, was Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu argued with the mushrikun that yes, the Persians have won this war, but a time will come soon where the Romans will win. And he argued on behalf of the Romans as if the Romans were Muslims, but they were Christians. But the success of the Christian Romans was seen to be a victory even for the Muslims, because they were our brothers in faith. They were our cousins in faith. So the Prophet ﷺ honored the Christians during his lifetime. He served the leaders of Najran. When the leaders of Najran came to Madinatul Munawwara, the Christian leaders, when they came to Medina and they visited the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ honored them and he welcomed them. He stood up for them in some narrations because they were the followers of his brother Isa alayhi salam. This is what we call love. Love is not using flowery words speaking about people. Love is serving those who love that person. Love is honoring those who honor that individual. And the Prophet honored the Christians of his community. And he served the Christians of his community. And he showed love to the leaders of the Christian community. And this is why the first follower of the Prophet was Waraqa ibn Nawfal after Khadijah radiyallahu anha. The first follower was Waraqa, who was a Christian priest. But he saw the truth of the Prophet ﷺ because he understood that this is the love that Isa ﷺ spoke of. The Quran speaks of different miracles of Isa ﷺ, speaks about the love that Allah had for Isa ﷺ. But I will end with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights the relationship that Allah has with Isa ﷺ on the Day of Judgment. Where Allah speaks about not just the love of the Prophet for Isa, but the love that Allah had for Isa ﷺ. And the relationship that Allah had for Isa ﷺ. Allah makes it clear, بَلْ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. These people could never have killed Isa because he was under my protection. They could never have touched Isa. He was under my protection this entire time. And he says on the day of judgment, Allah will turn to Isa alayhi salam and say, Ya Isa, أنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين من دون الله. Or Isa, this is a powerful conversation that takes place on the day of judgment between Allah and Isa alayhi salam. But at the end of it, it shows the relationship that Allah has for Isa and Isa has with the Prophet ﷺ. And I'll end with this. He says, أَأَنْتَ قُلْتَ لِلنَّاسِ, did you tell people to worship you? Did you tell people to worship your mother? Imagine in front of the trillions of human beings that are being questioned on that day, where Isa alayhi salam will also be questioned. And Allah will say to him, did you tell people to worship you and your mother in front of everyone? Did you tell them that? Wallah, and Allah knows best already. And Isa alayhi salam will respond by saying, Subhanak. Oh Allah, you are the most pure. All glory belongs to you. This is how Isa alayhi salam speaks to Allah. This is a sign that Allah loves Isa because he's sharing for our ummah. For our ummah, he's sharing how this prophet spoke to Allah and how we should speak to Allah. قَالُوا سُبْحَانَكَ. Oh Allah, you are the highest and the most pure. How could I say such a thing? مَا قُلْتُ لَهُمْ إِلَّا مَا أَمَرْتَنِي. I did not order them to do anything except for that which you told me. مَا يَكُونُ لِي أَنْ أَقُولَ مَا لَيْسَ لِي بِحَقٍّ. I didn't have a right to say that. I told them to worship you and I'm your prophet. I never told them to worship. I never told them to worship me. But Ya Allah, I was there as long as you had me there. فَلَمَّا تَوَفَّيْتَنِي كُنْتَ أَنْتَ الرَّقِيبَ عَلَيْهِمْ وَأَنْتَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. But after you raised me up, then at that point, oh Allah, I did not know what was happening. You know what is happening. And you are a witness of all of that which took place later. My dear brothers and sisters in faith, and the Christians that watch this today or watch it later, we love Isa alayhi salam. We love Isa alayhi salam. And we can say with definitiveness, more than you love him. Because these verses make us cry. These verses make us love Isa. We name our children Isa not because Isa taught us. We name our children Isa because Allah taught us to name our children Isa. Our Prophet taught us to name our children Isa. We name our daughters Maryam not because of Mary, but because of our Prophet and our tradition. Our tradition relies upon the love of the one who you call God. I encourage you and your friends to read about the story of Isa in Surah Maryam. I encourage you to read these verses in English. And for those who are believers, teach your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues to learn about, in this month of December, teach them to learn about Isa alayhi salam. Teach them to learn about what our Quran says about their prophet and how Allah honors their prophet and how our prophet honored their people. How Najashi served us, but our prophet served the Christians of Najran. How Waraqah was his first follower. How the monk in Syria saw the prophet and knew that he was a prophet. They knew that he was a prophet because we're one community. And at the end of this discussion, Isa alayhi salam says to Allah, "In tu'adhibhum فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ." Oh Allah, if you punish them, then they are your slaves because they obviously did shirk. But if you forgive them, then you are the most mighty, the most wise. The Prophet would recite this verse in tahajjud and cry all night. إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Oh Allah, if you punish them, then they are your slaves. No one can question if you choose to punish them. But if you forgive them, then it's not because you're unable, you're Aziz. And it's also not because you don't know what they did, you're Hakim. But you chose to forgive them. You chose to let them slide. This is Isa alayhi salam speaking about his community, and the Prophet would use this verse in tahajjud and speak about our ummah. They're one family. They use the same verses. They use similar supplications to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But your brothers and sisters, in this month of December and throughout the year, our tradition has taught us that as a part of our faith is that we believe in all of these prophets. In our belief in these prophets, like how the Prophet ﷺ fasted on Ashura on the 10th of Muharram in the 11th because of Musa alayhi salam. Our tradition teaches us the same for every prophet, that we honor their life, we honor their legacy, We honor their name, that after the name we say alayhi salam. And Isa alayhi salam's greatest sign of love for the Prophet in this ummah is that he will come back as a follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all those who followed him will also follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That أقربهم مودة للذين آمنوا الذين قالوا إنا نصارى. That when Isa alayhi salam comes down, all the Christians who believe in Isa, if they're alive at that time, they will have no choice but to believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because they will be told by their Prophet that I believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I believe in him as well. And a greater sign of his love is that after he performs Umrah and he comes to visit the Prophet ﷺ and he says salam to him, and after he lives his life of 40 years and passes away, the fourth spot that is in the hujrah, in the resting place in the room where the Prophet is laid, the fourth spot is secured and reserved for Isa alayhi salam. So you have the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, and Isa alayhi salam. The greatest space and the greatest room, the greatest dirt, the greatest land that even the dirt of Jannah envies, the dirt that is attached to the Prophet's body, that land, there's a spot in there for Isa alayhi salam. If this is not love, then I don't know what is love. If this is not honor, then what is honor? That we are reserving that spot, not for another Sahaba that came, like Uthman or Ibn Affan or his cousin Ali ibn Abi Talib. That spot was reserved for his brother and Isa alayhi salam. May Allah allow us to be amongst those people that can attach ourselves to the Quran, because the Quran is a source of all love for all these prophets. Attach ourselves to these stories, because these stories don't only give us a history lesson, but they leave a mark of love in our hearts and in the hearts of our children on how to honor the traditions of the other prophets that came before us. And may Allah allow us to be amongst those people that on the Day of Judgment can see the scene of the Prophet Isa rise together and drink from the hands of the Prophet and say salam to the other prophets while they're honoring the Prophet. May Allah make us amongst those people. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.